Welcome back to another edition of the All Access Football Show. I am your host, RIC, and a place to be, Ric Serritella, telling it like it is when it comes to the NFL draft and everything pigskin. We are your home for real football talk for the next hour of power. I tell you, time just flies by here each and every day, no days off, but I love talking football with you. So we appreciate you welcoming me into your monitor, wherever you may be watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, X. Please like, share, subscribe. We've got a great show lined up for you today. Woo, we're going to get it in. We're going to go around the football universe. We'll talk about the Monday Night Football action that was last night. We'll also get into some NFL draft conversation in the B block, go around the college football landscape. And then that'll be at 10:20. And then at 10:40 a.m., we have Josh Alper from Pro Football Talk joining us here on the All Access Football Show. He's been a longtime staple over at PFT. He's all over the Joe Burrow injury, the workouts that the Bengals have had with quarterbacks who could be Jake Browning's backup as the Bengals get ready for their Week 3 showdown between the Minnesota Vikings and Carson Wentz. We'll talk more about some injuries that came down the wire since yesterday's show, but we begin with a Monday Night Football doubleheader. By the way, buckle up. We got 2 wins last night in the NFL Pick'em. This week we were 10-6. I made a mistake, not 7-5 on Sunday, but 8-5 on Sunday, 0-1 on Thursday night, 2-0 on Monday night. That brings our weekly record to a respectable 10-6 after going 11-5 against the spread in week 1. So we are now 21-11 against the spread in NFL action through the first 2 weeks. So 2-0 last night. We got both games on the docket. Tampa Bay edging out Houston in that 20-19 victory during the first game of the Monday Night Football doubleheader. You saw Baker Mayfield orchestrate that 11-play, 80-yard drive. The second week in a row, Mayfield now has had come from behind last-minute drives to win the game. And this Tampa Bay team is all beat up, but they still find a way to win. I told you they're going to win that NFC South for the 5th consecutive season. I don't see any team really contending with them. Maybe the Falcons will be there in the end. Still got to see more out of them. But Mayfield was electric once again, doing it through the air, doing it on the ground, hitting Mike Evans for 5 catches. Emeka Egbuka with another touchdown. He has now have to be the leading candidate for your NFL Rookie of the Year, Emeka Egbuka, who we liked, along with Omarion Hampton, who we'll talk about in the other game, a rookie showdown of running backs. But Emeka Egbuka really stepping up for the injured Chris Godwin. He's going to have a huge role on this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team moving forward. And how about the 1-2 punch combination of Bucky Irving and Rashard White? 2 years ago, I think the Bucs were like the worst rushing team in the league. And Bucky Irving, I thought, was one of the most underrated players in the entire National Football League last year. You saw Rashard White with the rushing touchdown, go-ahead score, 136 rushing yards combined for that Tampa Bay backfield, despite being down their starting left tackle, Tristan Wirfs, despite losing their right tackle, Goki, during that game. Tampa Bay just came out and won a road game with a lot of men down, and that's going to tell you something, because this is a team that's going to contend. They're going to compete. They're going to be there at the end. Todd Bowles, always with a stout defense. 7 different Tampa Bay Bucs recorded pressures against that Houston offensive line, which is going to have some patchwork to do moving forward. I mean, Houston has got some trouble there with the offensive line. You saw Nick Chubb, 12 carries for 43 yards. But Woody Marks out of USC, somebody who caught our attention last year coming out for the draft. I thought he was the best pass catcher amongst running backs in the 2025 NFL draft. You saw him with a 37-yard reception, 3 carries for 14 yards. I totally expect Woody Marks to just see his volume and his workload and his role increase for this Houston Texans team. He didn't run the greatest 40-yard dash, but man, when he was down there in Mobile for the Senior Bowl. He was shifty enough to make defenders miss. He can make that first tackle miss. He's elusive in the open field. He's a slot weapon, catch the ball out of the backfield, and can give you something on the ground. So one positive development from the Houston Texans there was the play of Woody Marks, who I really like moving forward. So Tampa Bay 2-0 gets the job done, and Baker Mayfield proves why he is a top 10 quarterback in the National Football League. So I think we had it predicted at 22-20. Tampa Bay beats them 20-19. Okay. Second game of the Monday Night Football doubleheader was not so close. Los Angeles Chargers handling the Las Vegas Raiders 20-9. Justin Herbert clicking on all cylinders, hitting Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnson, each with touchdowns. And Omarion Hampton, who we mentioned, he made a rookie mistake, had a costly fumble in this matchup, split time with Najee Harris in that Chargers backfield. And, you know, this is a 2-0 team now. Suddenly, the Chargers are in first place in that highly competitive AFC West division. And, you know, there's a lot to get to in this game. Let's talk about the rookie running backs, because Omarion Hampton fumbled. Not too impressive. He was my pick. I had Hampton and then Ibuka as the top two leading candidates for the NFL Rookie of the Year award. Hampton doesn't look like he's off to a fast start, but neither is Ashton Genty, okay, who the Raiders chose with the 6th overall pick. And Genty, 11 carries for 43 yards, 3.9 rushing average, 72 yards through his first 2 games. And if you go back to his last college game, which raised some eyebrows to me at least, against Penn State, he couldn't get out of the mud. He was just stuck in neutral against that Penn State Nittany Lions defense that was just littered with Sunday players. And here you see him having trouble getting the momentum going. Like, it's one thing to run wild through the MAC conference. It's another thing to do it at the National Football League level. And I think you're starting to see that from Ashton Genty, who we raised this concern coming out for the draft. I think now it's time to look a little bit further into that. And what was he doing in pass protection? Like, he has no desire to even get a body on somebody. This guy's allergic to contact. He's a liability in pass protection. Take Ashton Genty out on third down situations, would you, Pete Carroll? Geno Smith, a tale of two Genos, right? He comes out firing in week 1, making you a believer. 343 yards, I think he had in week 1. Well, last night, just 180 passing yards, I believe. And more notably is beyond 10 yards, he can't throw the ball downfield. And he was 0 for 12 on pass attempts that exceeded 10 yards. All 3 of his interceptions came on those deep ball attempts. And Geno Smith is going to give you turnovers. That's just what he does. And he's a mediocre quarterback at best. And we're being generous there. But if you look at the Raiders' options, you know, they didn't have a whole heck of a lot to lean on. Carr retired. Aiden O'Connell has been a little bit of a roller coaster ride and is constantly hurt. So here is Geno Smith, your fearless leader of the silver and black. And that's why I have them picked for the bottom of the barrel in this AFC West. Obviously, the Chiefs 0-2, also sitting in the basement, and Denver 1-1. We saw Bo Nix and Sean Payton getting animated on Sunday on the sidelines. But sticking to this Monday Night Football matchup, the Raiders, Brock Bowers, he was questionable coming into the game, was a full go, but not much of a factor. 5 catches for just 38 yards. And we mentioned the LA Chargers now sit atop that AFC East, but it doesn't come without some injury concern, because Khalil Mack, who left that game in the first half with an elbow injury, now will undergo testing this week. So we'll see the outcome of this elbow injury for Khalil Mack moving forward for the Los Angeles Chargers. One guy we should highlight, Deion Henley, who I loved coming out, was at Washington, I believe. Harbaugh called him a rising star. He was all over the field. He, too, was questionable with an illness in this game, and Harbaugh said, hey, the medicine was out there on this matchup. So Harbaugh taking care of business against his good old friend, Pete Carroll, a rivalry that dates back to his Stanford, USC days, and no love lost there between Pete Carroll and Jim Harbaugh for that Monday Night Football edition. Now, we mentioned the Khalil Mack injury, okay, and the Chargers might need a pass rusher, but we know that there is one pass rusher who is now off the market, and that would be Jadeveon Clowney, who signed with the Dallas Cowboys immediately following the Week 2 slate. So Jadeveon Clowney, the number one pick in that 2014 NFL draft, he had an interview yesterday and says, "Man, I feel like I got a lot left, a lot of gas left in the tank." So 5.5 sacks for Carolina last year, 58 career sacks for Jadeveon Clowney. He's now going to step in to a critical pass rush role for the Cowboys, and he is expected to go this Sunday. All right, so no training camp, no problem for Jadeveon Clowney. All right, couple other injury updates that occurred while we were away for the past 24 hours. Very disappointing to see JJ McCarthy now is going to miss another possible month with an ankle injury. And, it surely was hindering him there in that Monday Night Football matchup that the Vikings lost. But he's going to miss now 2 to 4 weeks. Minnesota brought in Carson Wentz. Okay. And Wentz will get the first crack at this. But here's a guy I don't really have a lot of confidence in. That is Carson Wentz, because once Philadelphia handed him that fat sack of cash, and this is coming from the Eagles players, not me, but he completely checked out. He was done. I don't think Carson Wentz loves the game. Honestly, he'd rather be duck hunting in the woods somewhere. But he'll gladly take another NFL paycheck from you and put the wool over your eyes, and maybe Kevin O'Connell can get something or squeeze something out of him. But I don't think it's going to be very positive for Carson Wentz, who we last saw, I think, in Kansas City. And how about this for a Week 3 showdown with the Vikings and Bengals? Carson Wentz versus Jake Browning. Not exactly the classic QB duel you want to see on Sundays, but here we are. JJ McCarthy, this is certainly going to stunt his development and probably hinder his growth in the long term. Now, Max Brosmer, who we've talked about on this show out of Minnesota, I was a big fan coming out of this year's draft. I felt like he was clearly the best quarterback down at the East-West Shrine Bowl throughout the week of practice and into the game. Got a chance to speak with Max Brosmer, real good, high character, very smart, very personable. And I do believe that after the Carson Wentz debacle that we're going to see here in Week 3, Kevin O'Connell is going to be tempted to turn it over to the undrafted rookie out of Minnesota, that is Max Brosmer. Okay, Jaden Daniels also appearing on the injury report now. He has a knee. He's considered questionable. Head coach Dan Quinn saying it's a day-to-day situation, so we'll continue to monitor the Jaden Daniels situation in Washington. And if he can't go, well, then Marcus Mariota, remember him, will get the start. The 2014 Heisman Trophy winner, of course, the number 2 overall pick in that 2015 NFL draft. And remember, that was I don't want to say famous, it might be infamous now, because neither one of them really panned out as successful long-term NFL starters. But Jameis Winston was the first overall pick in that 2015 NFL draft. Marcus Mariota was number 2. If you remember 10 years ago, that was a big debate leading up to the draft, Winston or Mariota. And here they are, both now backups. And we got into the Jameis Winston situation last night on the New and Blue podcast with my co-host Dan Orlando. And we're there each and every Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, live right here. But we talked about, what does the future of Jameis Winston hold? Because you take a look around the league, all these quarterback injuries popping up. You got San Francisco with Brock Purdy. Cincinnati now, it looks like Burrow will be, they're saying 3 months. I'm hearing the season. Minnesota, would they want a stopgap solution? Like, the problem is Winston is so affordable at $4 million and he signed a 2-year deal. Russell Wilson signed a 1-year deal. And so I do think, as my co-host Dan Orlando pointed out on last night's show, Winston's kind of baked in the recipe here to be the backup next year. Once Russell Wilson departs, they're paying Russell $22 million guaranteed for this 1-year rental, essentially. And eventually, I would think by week 5 against the Saints, Dart will be in there to start, and they'll be fading out Russell Wilson. But Jameis Winston at $4 million, I'd rather keep him in-house and keep him as a backup for this year and next year at $4 million. Very reasonable. What is he really going to fetch on the open market? You're probably looking at a day 3 pick and probably a later day 3 pick. So I'd rather have Winston unless somebody comes in and knocks your socks off. But I just don't know how many teams are really viewing Jameis Winston as an upgrade. Like, I don't see him as an upgrade over Jake Browning. Maybe Minnesota, maybe, San Francisco, it's debatable. Like, pick your poison, Mac Jones or Jameis Winston. You're probably going to get more turnovers with Winston at this stage of the game in terms of how Kyle Shanahan likes to run that offense down in San Francisco. So those are your latest news and notes from around the league, along with your Monday Night Football recap. You're tuned into the All Access Football Daily Show. We're live 7 days a week, 10 a.m. Eastern. We've got a great guest coming up at 10:40 a.m. We'll have Josh Alper from Pro Football Talk, who's been doing it and doing it well over there for the last 18 years. Unbelievable. Just a great run. He's been a longtime staple at Pro Football Talk, which needs no introduction, probably the most popular football website on the planet. And so we'll break it down. We'll chop it up with Josh Alper. We're looking forward to that at 10:40 a.m. Eastern time. Okay. And we've got a lot of great content over on the website for you to digest and consume as well. We just posted the SMU top draft eligible prospects. Last week, we posted the Florida State top draft eligible prospects. And we also posted just today an update of the top 30 draft eligible tight ends. Okay, yesterday we updated the quarterback, running back, and wide receiver big board. You can find those over at allaccessfootball.com. And when we come back, we're going to get into some NFL draft conversation. We've always got one eye on the NFL draft at All Access Football. Take advantage of our promo code. We got a September pop-up sale, 30% off. Gain access to all the premium content. That includes the 2026 NFL Draft Bible featuring over 500 in-depth scouting reports for that 2026 NFL Draft, and the scouting department is doing a phenomenal job. Now, we're going to take our first break of the day. When we come back in the B block, we'll get into some of that NFL Draft talk, but I also want to touch base on one storyline that the mainstream media has not really focused on, right? And that's what we do here at the All Access Football Show. We bring you real football talk, no hidden agendas, no suits upstairs calling the shots, and no fear about what we talk about here on the All Access Football Show. So I'm going to get into that right after this. Don't go anywhere. Hey, RIC in a place to be. Ric Serritella checking in from the legendary Jersey Shore for the world-famous All Access Football, and you're tuned in to the All Access Football Daily Show, our newest venture here at the world-famous All Access Football, read by all 32 NFL teams and 50,000 subscribers from around the world. And I've been blessed and fortunate enough to work in this great game of football for the past 2 decades. It's our 24th season of providing you independent analysis when it comes to the NFL draft and everything pigskin, whether it's the NFL, college football, NFL draft, CFL, UFL. We'll be with you each step of the way, especially for draft season when we really get into high mode. Of course, it's all brought to you by the 2026 NFL Draft Bible, published in April, featuring over 500 in-depth scouting reports with our boots-on-the-ground analysis. We'll be on location at the All-Star Games, the NFL Scouting Combine, the Pro Day circuit, counting you down to that 2026 NFL Draft in Pittsburgh. And be sure you check us out over at allaccessfootball.com. We've got a great promo discount for you listeners at home. If you enter our promo code RICVIP, you'll get a 30% discount off of all of our premium content. You'll unlock the magic, get our NFL Draft insider reports, Scouting Notebook, of course, the World Football All Access Football Report published on Wednesday. It's your new home for real football talk. So follow along, give us a shout. We hope you're enjoying the show. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or X, please give it a like, a share, a subscribe, and we'll be with you each and every day here, 7 days a week, live, 10 a.m. Eastern, no days off. Rain, sleet, hail, snow, the show must go on. For Ric Serritella and the All Access Football Daily Show, keep it locked, everybody. All right. Thank you for that, Oceana. You are tuned in to the All Access Football Daily Show with your host, Ric Serritella, here on this Tuesday, September 16th, 2025. We got the A block in the books. Josh Alper from Pro Football Talk coming up in about 15 minutes, but we're going to dive into the NFL draft universe and take a look at some of the latest happenings over at All Access Football. And we talked about Monday Night Football, some of the latest injuries in the A block, including a slew of quarterbacks who are down in the National Football League. Well, that has now trickled over to the college side as well, especially with our top two quarterbacks on the big board, most notably Garrett Nussmeier, who has now come down with a torso injury, and head coach Brian Kelly attributing this to too much throwing in preseason camp. Well, whose fault is that, coach? Anyways, that's the story that they're sticking with. We'll see how much this impacts Nussmeier moving forward. In August, Coach Kelly also revealed that Nussmeier was dealing with this case of patellar tendonitis in his knee. Okay. And maybe that is led to the reason why LSU has had the worst offense in the entire SEC. They're ranked dead last with 20 points per game. Nussmeier still, though, looks like the most polished quarterback ready for the National Football League. He's probably the only quarterback I would pound the table for in round one at this juncture. A lot could change between now and April. Okay. We've got about 229 days to go, I think, until the 2026 NFL draft in Pittsburgh. But, they face Southeast Louisiana this week, an FCS opponent. It might just make sense to let Nussmeier rest this week, get his legs back under him, so to speak. And I wouldn't be shocked if they do that. Now, in other LSU news, I did see they landed the number one high school quarterback recruit yesterday. So, this is the power of the NIL, because I don't know about you guys, but Brian Kelly's not somebody that I would want to play for. I just don't like his fake, phony personality. That's just me personally, but hey, I'm keeping it real. When NIL is involved and there's paychecks involved, well, that could sway the opinion or desire to want to go play for him. And LSU now, who's produced quite a few NFL quarterbacks, looks like they got a really another one waiting in the wings for when Nussmeier departs after this season. But to me, Nussmeier is the clear-cut top prospect on our big board, and Lenore Sellers, number two from South Carolina. Listen, he just took a ferocious hit on Saturday. He's going to be in concussion protocol this week. And we'll see how much that lingers. We'll see how much that impacts the season, how much that impacts his draft stock. And that's our number one and number two quarterbacks right now. And, I've been getting a lot of criticism, a lot of heat I've got Arch Manning still as our number 3 quarterback prospect. Okay. I understand a lot of you don't think he's going to declare for the NFL draft. If New Orleans Saints are picking number 1, there might be something there. In addition, I'm not going to panic and grade a guy just off of 3 starts. There's pedigree there. This guy's a high school state champion for a reason. The bloodlines mean something. I mean, when do you think Arch Manning began breaking down film? He was born out of the womb. He was in the crib breaking down film, probably. And so the smarts, the tools, it's all there. We've just got to see it now. And so we'll see. I mean, maybe he started off at 1, he's now at 3. Maybe he continues the slide, but we're not going to panic and just shake up the entire big board this early on in the season. Now, I would say the quarterback tiers are pretty interesting when you look at it, because after Nussmeier and Sellers, you've got Manning, whose status is a little bit questionable whether or not he'll declare for the draft. I do think Carson Beck is that next signal caller, all right, out of Miami. NFL scouts have not yet wavered off of him, and he's been a solid first round pick for the last 2 or 3 years. So after that, there's a lot of jockeying for position. You've got Drew Allar from Penn State, Fernando Mendoza from Indiana, Taylor Green from Arkansas. There seems to be a lot of love for Sam Levitt out of Arizona State. But those are the top 8 signal callers on our big board, and we just updated the top 30 draft eligible prospects for you to digest over there on the allaccessfootball.com website. Okay. Also, we updated the running back big board, top 30. We've got Jeremiah Love of Notre Dame sits atop the big board. CJ Baxter from Texas breaking in our top 5. He comes in at number 4. Wayman Jordan, we just talked about Woody Marks out of USC. Well, his replacement, Wayman Jordan, now has made a big impression on us early on in the year. He's skyrocketing up draft boards, and there's a lot of interesting scat backs in this draft class. You know, you got Justice Haynes from Michigan, real compact, stocky running back at 5'9" and 6/8 inches, 210 pounds. Damon Claiborne out of Wake Forest, real good looking running back, 5'8" and 5/8 inches, 200 pounds. How about Jonah Coleman? I mean, he might be out to the hottest start in terms of running backs in the college football level, out of Washington, 5'8" and 6/8 inches, 229 pounds. Jam Miller, who's been injured here early on in the season, from Alabama, 5'8" and 5/8, 218 pounds. So a lot of these smaller, compact backs. Desmond Reed, if you want to throw him into the equation, out of Pittsburgh, 5'7" and 5/8 inches, 175 pounds. How they've used him this year has been a little bit questionable to me, but he's an explosive looking running back as well. Again, we've got the top 30 running backs posted up on the website for you there. Also, wide receivers, you know, Jordan Tyson, Arizona State, Jeremy Bernard from Alabama, who had 2 touchdowns this past Saturday, one on a reverse, another one receiving. Carnell Tate out of Ohio State, Nick Harbor from South Carolina, Mekhi Lemon from USC are our top 5 wide receiver prospects. And this is a really deep class in terms of wide receiver prospects. I don't know how many round 1 guys we're going to see. I think that depends on the underclassmen, but it is pretty deep and talented in terms of overall talent when it comes to the wide receiver position. All right, tight ends, we just updated today. And, you know, for me personally, I don't see a lot of other people having Eli Stowers out of Vanderbilt as their number 1 tight end, but he's the cleanest tight end, in my opinion. Former quarterback, tremendous athleticism, had a chance to go down there in Vanderbilt for training camp and get to see him up close in person. The coaches just rave about him. You saw Vanderbilt blow the doors off against South Carolina. Eli Stowers in the mix there. He comes in at 6'3" and 5/8 inches, 235 pounds, although I think he put on a few pounds there in training camp. 4.52 estimated 40-yard dash. He's our number 1 tight end. You got guys like Max Clear out of Ohio State, Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon floating around. How about a mid-major prospect in Joe Royer from Cincinnati? Other guys catching my attention is Michael Trigg from Baylor, big playmaking wide receiver there. Justin Jolly, North Carolina State. We've talked about him. And I just mentioned today we posted the SMU top draft eligible prospects, and RJ Maryland comes in at number 10 out of SMU. Of course, the son of Russell Maryland. If you're a little bit older like myself, then you remember Russell Maryland, the number one overall pick in the 1991 NFL draft by the Dallas Cowboys, getting chased down by Don Beebe in that Super Bowl, dangling that football there like a loaf of bread. But the big board is flowing out. We also posted the scout notebook yesterday on Monday. So you can go over to allaccessfootball.com, get all of the prospects that caught our attention from the past weekend. And one of those guys was Trey Zune from Texas A&M, another guy who's been banged up early on in the season here for the Aggies. But he's going to be an interesting case study, that Trey Zune, and that's because he's got great size and 6'6", 315 pounds, obviously a lot of starting experience, but 31 and 2/8 inches arms. That's going to be a concern. And we talked about that on the Saturday show with our special guest host, Russ Landy, who joins the show for our Saturday college football pregame show with NFL Draft Slam. But, they made a big deal about Will Campbell in this year's draft, and he was, 33-inch arms. Trey Zune, 31 and 2/8 inch arms. I mean, it's going to be hard for him to survive on the outside at the next level. So I think he's going to have to ultimately kick inside, play guard. Who knows? Maybe center. We shall see. But we'll be updating the offensive tackle big board along with all the positional prospects throughout the week. So keep it locked over at allaccessfootball.com. And we mentioned SMU now just posted today. Previously, we posted Florida State and Darrell Jackson, the defensive tackle there, making big noise, moving up draft boards. Of course, Florida State out to a fast start and just a big-bodied, experienced interior force. Probably a day two projection right now on the overall big board. And you can get the whole in-depth scouting report on Darrell Jackson and RJ Maryland, and the team draft watches just keep flowing over at the allaccessfootball.com. Okay, now we do have Josh Alper from Pro Football Talk coming up in about 5 minutes, but I wanted to touch base on a story, and I teased this before the break in the last segment, and I understand that the NFL and their media partners don't really want to touch this story too much, but maybe we'll ask Josh Alper about it because he's a no-holds-barred, opinionated person. How the heck is Tom Brady allowed to be an owner, to be a broadcaster, to be a coach, to be a GM? Like, here's a guy who can have his cake and eat it too, because the NFL just caters to the 7-time Super Bowl champion who is Tom Brady. And you saw him up there in the coach's booth last night during the Chargers and Raiders game. I mean, what are we doing here? Like, is this not a competitive advantage for the Las Vegas Raiders? Now, we haven't seen it on the field thus far. I just don't understand how this is even allowed, quite frankly. He's going to be on the Dallas-Chicago game next week, so I get it. It's an NFC game, but there is certainly a conflict of interest, especially when you hear head coach Pete Carroll talk about Brady's involved in the game plan. He talks to Chip Kelly about 3 times a week on the phone, breaking down film, going over the playbook. And so when you're a broadcast analyst, you're allowed into these production meetings and you're getting insider info. You're getting FaceTime with the opponent's head coaches and key players and learning about their schemes and how they're going to go. I mean, like, it's not like it's the end all be all, but it's certainly a competitive advantage. And I just don't know how it's tolerated. I don't know how the other 31 teams around the National Football League don't have their hands up in angst. Like, yo, what's going on? Like, what are we doing? I just thought it was very bizarre. You know, you see him up there in the coach's booth. He has all this access to all the teams. He's pretty much a coach and a GM. He you know, you heard he made the call to draft Cam Miller, the quarterback. That was his pick. He's in Chip Kelly's ear throughout the week, going over the playbook and breaking down film. And now we're going to allow this man to be in the production meetings and gain insight into the opponents. Like, that behooves me. I don't understand how Tom Brady is allowed to do this. So, anyway, we're going to take one more quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to have Josh Alper, longtime staple from Pro Football Talk. Maybe he'll weigh in on the whole Tom Brady situation. He's all over the Joe Burrow injury, some quarterbacks that the Bengals have brought in. We'll ask him about Daniel Jones and the Colts. Is that a real substance thing or a mirage? We got a lot to digest with Josh Alper from Pro Football Talk right after the break. Don't go anywhere. Hey, RIC in a place to be. Ric Serritella checking in from the legendary Jersey Shore for the world famous All Access Football, and you're tuned in to the All Access Football Daily Show, our newest venture here at the world famous All Access Football, read by all 32 NFL teams and 50,000 subscribers from around the world. And I've been blessed and fortunate enough to work in this great game of football for the past 2 decades. It's our 24th season of providing you independent analysis when it comes to the NFL draft and everything pigskin, whether it's the NFL, college football, NFL draft, CFL, UFL. We'll be with you each step of the way, especially for draft season when we really get into high mode. Of course, it's all brought to you by the 2026 NFL Draft Bible, published in April, featuring over 500 in-depth scouting reports with our boots-on-the-ground analysis. We'll be on location at the All-Star Games, the NFL Scouting Combine, the Pro Day Circuit, counting you down to that 2026 NFL Draft in Pittsburgh. And be sure you check us out over at allaccessfootball.com. We've got a great promo discount for you listeners at home. If you enter our promo code RICVIP, you'll get a 30% discount off of all of our premium content. You'll unlock the magic. Get our NFL Draft Insider Reports, Scouting Notebook, of course, the World Football All Access Football Report, published on Wednesday. It's your new home for real football talk. So follow along, give us a shout. We hope you're enjoying the show. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or X, please give it a like, a share, a subscribe, and we'll be with you each and every day here, 7 days a week, live, 10 a.m. Eastern, no days off, rain, sleet, hail, snow. The show must go on. For Ric Serritella and the All Access Football Daily Show, keep it locked, everybody. All right, back at it again. All right, seeing the place to be. Ric Serritella here on the All Access Football Daily Show. We're just heating up, bringing you the names you need to know when it comes to the NFL draft. We did that in the B block. We went around the league in the A block in the National Football League, that is, and recapped some of the Monday Night Football action from last night. And my next guest is here to add his insight and analysis. He's been a long-time guest on my previous shows. He's making his All Access Football debut here, and we thank him so much for taking some time to join us. A longtime staple at Pro Football Talk, by the way. He is Josh Alper, and he joins us right now. Good morning, Josh. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Rick. How are you?
I'm doing good. I saw you are now, is it 18 years at profootballtalk.com?
It's fun. It is. It's been a wild ride. It was independent and now NBC and a lot of changes in the football landscape over that time. But yeah, I've been working with Mike and the crew over there for a very long time now.
That's outstanding, man. I love to see it too, because I remember when it was in its infancy and it was an independent site and you guys just blew it out of the water, and you've been there to watch it all grow. And we appreciate you taking some time here today to enlighten us. And before the commercial break, I was talking about Tom Brady and the competitive advantage that he has. Do you not see an issue with this situation?
I see a big issue with it, and I think it's something that we've pointed out, multiple times over the last couple of years since he started the Fox job. That it really seems to be something that other teams would have a bigger interest in seeing go away. And I don't know if it's because the Raiders aren't seen as a threat to, or haven't been a threat to other teams, or that there's some question about the level of his involvement in the day-to-day with the Raiders versus this being sort of a passive investment. But you see him in the box with Mark Davis at a game. They're talking about him on the phone with Chip Kelly, and if they've loosened the rules and in terms of the pre-game production meetings and things like that, it is something that screams a conflict of interest. But it doesn't seem to be anything that the NFL wants to get really involved in. And I think perhaps that's because they want Tom Brady to be as involved in the league as he can be because of who he is and what he's accomplished.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. Let's talk about that Chargers 20-9 victory over the Raiders. And you're right. If the Raiders were sitting here 2-0, you might hear a little bit noise about this situation. But, the quarterback situation is obviously an issue. We saw the tale of two Genos from week 1 to week 2, 3 interceptions there. Let's get your opinion, though, on these rookies, because there was a lot of expectations coming from Ashton Jeanty being the number 6 pick. 11 carries, 43 yards, 72 rushing yards in the past 2 games. You go back to that Penn State game, he had his tires stuck in mud, couldn't really get it going. Are you concerned about Ashton Jeanty as he makes the transition from running through the MAC to trying to be a stud at the National Football League?
I think it's 2 games, and I think we're so accustomed to the instant gratification. I think it's going to take time. It's a new offense, a new quarterback, a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, a lot of changes on that team, in terms of players in new spots, the offensive line gelling. I think it's going to take time, but I think it's also, it is a reminder of how different the college game is to the professional game. And, we saw Bijan Robinson took time to get going. There are other really talented backs that didn't, knock it out of the park day one. Now, if we get to November and he's still running for 40, 45 yards a game, and the offense is still reliant on Geno Smith, who's the boom and bust quarterback he's always been, and you can't expect him to be any better or worse than he is. So it has to step up at some point. But I wouldn't be pressing any panic buttons right now, especially with Pete Carroll, who's a guy who's going to remain devoted to the run game. He's not going to just all of a sudden stop trying to run the football.
Unless it's the Super Bowl and they need a yard on the goal line. Josh Alper here on the All Access Football Show, joining us from Pro Football Talk. And Amarian Hampton, he had the fumble, not so good. But if Jeanty could pan out, they do have some building blocks there in Las Vegas with Brock Bowers, 5 catches, 38 yards. Khalil Mack leaving that game with an elbow injury. I know you guys will have an update over at profootballtalk.com throughout the week on that. Let's shift gears over to Tampa Bay and Houston, where, another rookie has made an impact. Emeka Egbuka, you saw him score another touchdown, stepping in for Chris Godwin. Baker Mayfield pulling out the late game heroics. What do you make of this Buccaneers team, who has won the NFC South the last 4 years and seems to be just moving and grooving despite being a little bit banged up? Godwin's down, Wirfs is down. You saw them lose their other offensive tackle, but Mayfield just continues to deliver.
Yeah, that was a really remarkable final drive there. And with 2 weeks in a row for Baker to do that, and now we're into, the third season of him doing this in Tampa, and it's almost unthinkable that there was a real question about whether he'd ever be a starting quarterback in the NFL again. Really, 2021, 2022, that things got so dark for him, in Cleveland, and then that weird Carolina tenure, and it sort of felt like he was cycling out of the league, and that he wasn't going to be able to do it. And you watch him play, and he's not the most physically talented guy. He's certainly not the biggest guy, but he's got whatever that thing that you can't teach, and the thing that you can't you can't find in quarterbacks that have more physical talent than he does, and this just drive and desire and relentlessness that for any NFL team you'd love to have it, and for a team like the Bucs that has really done a super job of surrounding him with talent and investing in the offensive line and investing in spots that are the key spots around the field, that it feels like they could go even higher this year than winning the division and maybe winning one playoff game. The injuries are concerning. Kalijah Cansey going down last night, a pectoral injury that tends to not work out well in terms of getting a guy back. But yeah, if they get Chris Godwin back and Tristan Wirfs back, and they can avoid those other big injuries, I think that offense can be as good as any in the NFC, quite honestly. And when you have a quarterback who, whatever the situation is going to say, we can still win this game, that's a pretty big thing to have when you actually believe it.
Yeah, Baker is just a gamer, and we saw that at Oklahoma, and it's the it factor. What is it? I mean, he's got the intangibles that Baker Mayfield, and of course, Todd Bowles' defense is always going to be prepared. You saw 7 different defenders with the quarterback pressure there last night, so I totally expect Tampa Bay to be in heavy contention to emerge from the NFC. Now, there's injuries popping up all over the league. I know one you've really been all over is this Joe Burrow injury. Cincinnati now turning to Jake Browning, but I know that they've worked out several quarterbacks, so they could be looking to bring somebody in. Tell us about those guys.
Yeah, well, they're signing Sean Clifford and Mike White to the practice squad, so they are really adding some depth. They had Brett Rippon there already. The free agent market is not long on players who are going to upgrade you from Jake Browning, especially since he's started games in Zach Taylor's offense in the past. And as we saw on Sunday, Zach Taylor can scheme up some pretty good stuff there when you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins catching passes. That there's a lot you can do without Joe Burrow. I think ultimately when you're scheming everything up, the talent wins out, and you'd rather have Joe Burrow, but I think they can win games with Jake Browning if their defense keeps playing the way it has for the first 2 weeks. It wasn't great against Jacksonville, but it was good enough. It was certainly good enough in week 1 against Cleveland when the offense was really misfiring. I do wonder, long term, if the turnover issues for Browning are going to hold them back. But if you're the Bengals, can you really afford to go trade for Kirk Cousins? And is Kirk Cousins going to do a better job than Jake Browning will do? I don't see that the Giants are in any hurry to trade Jameis Winston. These options are all, you're sorting through the remainder bin. And to go back to what we were just talking about, every now and again you pull out a Baker Mayfield, but most of the time these guys are where they're at in their careers for a pretty good reason. And so, you'll have Clifford and White and Rippon and guys who have played in the NFL and have had, varying amounts of success when they've been pushed into situations. If Browning were to go down, I think you're in a real trouble spot for the Bengals. And I think that the key right now is to make sure that Al Golden's defense is as good as it possibly can be, because you're going to probably have to win games in a little bit different way than just saying to Joe Burrow, let it rip, and we'll take what happens.
Yeah, Al Golden, a Jersey guy. Mike White, I think he did work out with San Francisco last week, so that's interesting that the Bengals jumped on him. And you mentioned Kirk Cousins. I'm just curious, do you think there's any chance that he could land in San Francisco, Kirk Cousins, that is?
I would think you need to hear that Brock Purdy is going to be out for a lot longer than it currently looks like. I think if San Francisco had the injury that Cincinnati had, I think there would be a lot of buzz about that because of Kyle Shanahan's history with Kirk Cousins and Kirk Cousins' history in that Shanahan style of an offense and all of those things. There would be a lot to like about that connection, but Kirk Cousins wasn't any better than Mac Jones last season. Just to be,
True,
as blunt about it as we possibly can be. And the idea that, he's probably a little bit healthier than he was last year is something to think about. But what are you going to have to give up for him? What is that going to mean for your bottom line? If you're the 49ers and you believe in Robert Saleh's defensive acumen and you have Christian McCaffrey and you're going to get hopefully some of these receivers back, George Kittle back, can you devise an offense that Mac Jones can run effectively? And I think Kyle Shanahan would believe in himself on that front. I would tend to as well. And again, I think they hope Purdy's back in a week or two. But if it looks like if that changes, I think that Kirk Cousins would absolutely be on the table.
Yeah, Mac Jones looking pretty good there, filling in. We'll see if he can sustain that. All right, Josh Alper, Pro Football Talk, Ric Serritella, All Access Football Daily Show here, breaking it up, chopping it down. I got to get your opinion now on Danny Dimes all of a sudden because the Colts, like I'm here in New Jersey. I've watched every game of Daniel Jones' career. We've never seen him play like this in 5 years. And I caught his interview on the Pat McAfee show where he was talking about what he learned in Minnesota. And I don't think he meant it as a slight to New York, but he was talking about just the level of preparation and just the intensity of preparation and going over every scenario possible for the upcoming game. He said he learned more in Minnesota, it sounded like, than any pit stop in his career. And now doing big things. Shane Steichen, another great offensive mind. Are you buying or selling what these Colts are doing?
Right now, I'm buying it more that Daniel Jones would have taken what happened at the Giants last year. That time in Minnesota, Kevin O'Connell is as good as it gets in terms of working with quarterbacks. He got Sam Darnold paid. We'll see if Carson Wentz is going to start this week. That would be probably the biggest reclamation project of all. But I bet he'll come up. He made Josh Dobbs look like an NFL starter for a few weeks there a couple of years ago. I think that being around that, and I agree, I don't think it's a slight on Brian Daboll. They went to the playoffs together, and Daboll put tons of faith in Daniel Jones over the years. But I think that stepping back and seeing other people run an offense, and I think that to go all the way back, I think the Giants probably pulled Eli Manning too early in favor of Daniel Jones way back when, because he could have benefited, like so many other young quarterbacks, from watching a real pro, even one at the end of his career and wasn't that good of a player anymore, how they prepare, how they go through the week, watching and listening to the play calls and seeing how that progresses and reading that. And I think that all helps. I think that Jonathan Taylor, looking as healthy as he's looked for the first 2 weeks, has helped a great deal in Indianapolis. And Steichen is been in his bag in terms of calling plays that Daniel Jones likes. However, I'll say all of that if not for a leverage penalty at the end of that game against Denver, that's a 1-1 Colts team that beat a bad Dolphins team in week 1. And I don't think the level of discourse would be exactly the same about Daniel Jones is back and everything else. Now you're a 2-0 Colts team. The Texans are 0-2. No one else in that division looks particularly threatening in terms of the long haul. Jacksonville's up and down, and Tennessee is clearly at the start of building something with Cam Ward. But the opportunity's there, and I think that the key is going to be to keep, as long as you can keep him from trying to do too much. That was always the thing that killed him with the Giants, was always, that extra little bit, trying to get that extra yard. He wound up getting hurt, with some of the running and things like that. And I think Shane Steichen's been very good about that. And I think the Anthony Richardson experience has probably helped the Colts in terms of understanding that you don't want to put too much on your quarterback's plate all at once, because it doesn't always work out. And Jones is a lot more experienced than Richardson. And perhaps Richardson can get a similar growth experience from now finally having a chance to sit and watch a different quarterback prepare. I still need to see more to believe it. There were those spurts with the Giants where Daniel Jones looked great, but if 3-4 weeks from now it's continued, I think you're looking at a real thing there in Indianapolis.
Some very, very fair points that you make there, especially, the Giants were so quick to run Eli out of town. And now, look, they haven't stopped trying to find a replacement. But I heard Jordan Love talking a couple weeks ago recently about how much he learned and how grateful he was to sit behind Aaron Rodgers for 3 years. And we all know Rodgers wasn't teaching him anything, but just from the process of osmosis, he was able to learn, like you said, how to prepare, how to be a pro, how to study and break down film. So some very good insight here, Josh. We're up against it. We appreciate you checking in on the All Access Football Daily Show. Give the listening audience at home a little sneak peek of what you got on tap, what you're working on over at Pro Football Talk.
Well, I mean, we're working every day to bring you everything, every little bit of every little corner of the league. We're definitely keeping an eye on all of these injuries from last night. The Khalil Mack one did not look good, and on the tape, arms aren't supposed to move in that direction. So I think the Chargers are going to have that to deal with. But we'll have that, and what do we have coming? What does the NFL have coming? We sit there and we're ready for all of it. So keep banging away at our site, and we're there for you 24/7.
Hey, he's not lying, folks. He's on standby, ready to go. That Josh Alper, and we thank him so much. Josh, appreciate the time, man. This was awesome stuff.
My pleasure. Have a good one.
All right, there he is, Josh Alper, making his All Access Football debut here on the Hour of Power. I can't believe the time is just flying by on this Tuesday, September 16th, 2025. It was our 16th edition of the All Access Football Daily Show, and we broke down the Monday Night Football action in the A block. Went around the league with some of the latest injury updates, specifically at the quarterback spot. Took a quick break. We came back in the B block, turned it over to the NFL draft conversation, took a look at some of the latest big board movers and shakers. We also discussed the Tom Brady situation, and we just had Josh Alper, man, delivering. That's what Pro Football Talk does. They're only the most popular football website on the planet, so we thank Josh for joining us today. 18 years he's been doing it over there at profootballtalk.com. And All Access Football has been doing it since 2002, covering the NFL draft year-round, everything pigskin. Go check it out, allaccessfootball.com. We got a great promo sale, 30% off. That includes the 2026 NFL Draft Bible. Okay, tomorrow and each and every Wednesday throughout the regular season and into the playoffs, hopefully, we are going to have the legendary Howard Balzer, 50 years of covering the National Football League, a Pro Football Hall of Fame voter, of course, covering the beat there in Arizona for the Cardinals Wire over at USA Today. We'll have some H-bombs in the house on Wednesday's edition of the All Access Football Daily Show. And on your way out the door, I see we got a lot of people tuned in. If you don't mind, if I can ask you a favor, an ever so slightly favor, can you smash that like button? Can you share it? Can you subscribe it? Spread the word. Subscribe to the channel. We'll be isolating the Josh Alper interview like we do with all of our interviews over on the YouTube channel now. We've got a lot of great reels that come out each and every day. So if you're looking to digest and consume more content, some real football talk, head over to the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe there and go over to allaccessfootball.com, because tomorrow is the world famous All Access Football Report, read by 50,000 subscribers from 70 countries around the world and all 32 NFL teams. So are you subscribed yet? If not, what are you doing? All right, we'll be back at it again tomorrow. We thank everybody for tuning in today. Special thanks to Josh Alper, our guest for today, for stopping by and chopping it up. We'll be back tomorrow to break it all down, everybody. Hey, RIC in a place to be. Ric Serritella checking in from the legendary Jersey Shore for the world famous All Access Football, and you're tuned in to the All Access Football Daily Show, our newest venture here at the world famous All Access Football, read by all 32 NFL teams and 50,000 subscribers from around the world. And I've been blessed and fortunate enough to work in this great game of football for the past 2 decades. It's our 24th season of providing you independent analysis when it comes to the NFL draft and everything pigskin, whether it's the NFL, college football, NFL draft, CFL, UFL. We'll be with you each step of the way, especially for draft season when we really get into high mode. Of course, it's all brought to you by the 2026 NFL Draft Bible, published in April, featuring over 500 in-depth scouting reports with our boots-on-the-ground analysis. We'll be on location at the All-Star Games, the NFL Scouting Combine, the Pro Day circuit, counting you down to that 2026 NFL Draft in Pittsburgh. And be sure you check us out over at allaccessfootball.com. We've got a great promo discount for you listeners at home. If you enter our promo code RICVIP, you'll get a 30% discount off of all of our premium content. You'll unlock the magic. Get our NFL Draft Insider Reports, Scouting Notebook, of course, the World Football All Access Football Report published on Wednesday. It's your new home for real football talk. So follow along, give us a shout. We hope you're enjoying the show. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or X, please give it a like, a share, a subscribe, and we'll be with you each and every day here, 7 days a week, live, 10 a.m. Eastern, no days off, rain, sleet, hail, snow. The show must go on. For Ric Serritella and the All Access Football Daily Show, keep it locked, everybody.